also adjust to 9 different driving positions.
The customers were people that had a business reason for having these things.
The spare tire swings the rear end into the clear.
Remember when your car's seats vibrated if you were too close to an object or simply pushed a button to change gears? Believe it or not, there was a time when you could use air conditioning without even turning on the engine. So many futuristic automobile features have faded away because they were too much for the era. Today, we'll have a look at old car features that were way ahead of their time.
The spare tire swings the rear end into the clear.
As cars got bigger and parking spaces became smaller, parking was a bit of an issue. Parallel parking became a circus, with drivers going back and forth for a few hours to park their car correctly. To counter this problem, Brooks Walker invented the fifth wheel for parallel parking. The auxiliary wheel was introduced in the 1950s and installed on the rear. The retractable wheel could deploy and position itself perpendicular to the ground. It would lift the back end of the car to ensure other wheels were suspended and then pivot the vehicle into a narrow parking space. The design was showcased in various advertisements and public demonstrations, and Walker demonstrated it on Cadillacs and other brands. Even though it got a lot of attention from owners and manufacturers, it was never fully adopted as the standard because it was complex to maintain, added a significant amount of weight, and the cost was a burden for owners. Over time, power steering technology evolved and it became a substitute for the fifth wheel, and today there are automatic parking systems that closely resemble it.
Four-wheel steering.
When four-wheel steering became a feature in the 80s, it was different from the traditional system, allowing a rear wheel to turn at the same time as the front, improving response, maneuverability, and stability, especially when navigating through tight spaces or moving at high speeds. The steering saw some early developments in the 80s, especially with Japanese brands like Nissan and the 1987 Honda Prelude. The movement of the wheels was electronically controlled, allowing the rear to turn in the opposite or same direction as the front. It made parallel parking extremely easy, but it was quite expensive and a turn-off for buyers, not to mention the lack of stability at high speeds. It had major advantages like its turning radius and was easy to switch lanes, perfect for roads with low friction. The swing-away steering wheel was another clever innovation, quite useful in its time. In the early 60s, Ford introduced this feature on cars like the Thunderbird and the Mercury, and it was designed to pivot 9 inches to the right when a driver opened the door. This created space for drivers to slide into the seat before returning the wheel to its regular position. The feature was helpful for drivers who required the extra space to fit in, but also felt like a luxury feature because of its rarity. The swing-away steering wheel was well received by car lovers, but there were safety issues which made it problematic. The steering could become rigid and stuck after swinging to the side, making it difficult to go back to its position, and the feature was clearly suited for a much more distant future where automation is seamless. Chrysler introduced the Highway Hi-Fi record player in the mid-1950s to provide drivers and travelers with classic music from vinyl records while on the road. The player was designed to allow longer playtime per record, using a smaller vinyl disc which offered 1 hour of music on each side. That added up to 2 hours of entertainment. Chrysler models like Dodge, Imperial, and DeSoto offered it as an option, and it seemed like a classy addition to the vehicle, but the design had limitations which made it unsuitable for the era. Road vibrations became a factor that manufacturers didn't consider, and the music skipped or stopped completely with every bump and fast brake on the road. The imperfect shock absorption technology made the record player impractical, but certainly a feature that may work in the future.
Lush, tempting luxury with plush appointments,
Remember the Thermos Incorporated console? American Motor Corps introduced this feature in the 60s as a special compartment in the center console built to hold a thermos flask with drink cups. A convenient design providing drivers and passengers with pockets of space to keep beverages on long trips. It was family-friendly and practical, but slowly disappeared, being replaced by different interior designs with larger consoles for other use.
In less than 30 seconds, this girl's life will never be the same.
What you're looking at is the automatic seatbelt retractor. Introduced in the 60s to early 70s, it quickly garnered popularity, especially in the luxury car brand market. The appeal of the feature was it eliminated the hassle of manually adjusting your seatbelt each time, improving safety measures by keeping the driver strapped in at all times, without the need to physically buckle up. When the car door was opened, the belt unfastened, and when the door closed, it retracted to secure the driver in place automatically. It seemed like a great invention, except for the odd positioning of the belt, which would often get in the way. General Motors was the first car brand to implement the retractor, but safety regulations evolved and the belts had to change.
When these things were first starting to pop up in the mid-1980s.
In the 1980s, advancements in cellular technology led to the development of these cool new car features called car phones. They were much smaller than the mobile phones of the era and packed a whole lot more power. Companies like AT&T and Motorola were the first to develop models which could connect the emerging cellular network, providing a clear network for users. Car phones were first launched as a luxury feature on high-end cars. Brands like Mercedes and Cadillac adopted them for executives and high-status customers. Over time, the feature became more common in regular vehicles, providing communication options for more customers. What began as a large, cumbersome design with poor signal developed into a smaller, reliable technology. Car phones began to fade in the 1990s when portable cell phones became cheaper and more common, but it remains an advanced concept that will likely find its way into the future. In the old days, driving at night with a high beam was problematic because drivers had to switch between high and low so as not to impair the vision of drivers. To tackle the issue, General Motors and others introduced an innovation in the 50s called the automatic headlamp dimmer, known as the Ultronic Eye. It employed photoelectric sensors and would first be used on Cadillacs. Typically mounted on the hood or dashboard, it worked by regulating the brightness of your beam when other cars were approaching. Whenever it detected headlights, it dimmed the brightness and switched it back to high automatically when a car passed by. It enhanced the driver's focus by eliminating the hassle of manually controlling beams, but it didn't make it to the mainstream and was never widely adopted. Today, similar innovations are in use, using cameras and sensors to detect headlights and taillights.
First, we fasten your safety belt. Why?
General Motors first introduced the vibrating front seat warning in the early 2010s, and enthusiasts bought the idea. It was certainly a safety feature that could save anyone who began to experience health issues while driving. It was originally called the Safety Alert Seat, designed to vibrate and signal potential danger to the driver. If the driver was drifting off their lane or was moving too fast towards an obstacle, the seat would vibrate and signal the driver about the dangers involved. The warning feature used sensors and cameras to monitor the surroundings, and when a hazard was detected, the front seats would vibrate to catch the attention of the driver. It enhanced alertness and has since been adopted into more vehicles like the Cadillac XTS.
High prices have turned the great European cars away from you. Now Renault brings...
Have you ever noticed the center-mounted stoplight at the rear end of most vehicles? Many don't pay attention to the feature because the brightness of the left and right lights compared to it. The center light is positioned in the middle, either above the trunk or the rear window. When the light comes on, it signals to other drivers the car is braking and coming to a stop. It enhances vehicle safety while reducing the possibility of a rear-end collision. and the idea of the center-mounted stoplight was tested in the 70s to see if it had a profound impact, and was discovered there were fewer rear-end crashes with vehicles that had the center lights. By the 80s, these lights became standard on all passenger vehicles. The hood-mounted gun sight, also known as the sight gauge, was a hood ornament which was more than just a symbol of the vehicle brand. It also had other functions. In the 1940s and 50s, luxury makers developed a trend where brands wanted to advertise models and brands using figures that stood on top of the hood. It was popular in luxury vehicles like Pontiac, Buick, and Cadillac, and some used various symbols, while others used chrome metal gun sights, which closely resembled a crosshair. It symbolized precision and authority, and not only that, it was used by drivers to align their car on the road, ensuring the vehicle wouldn't move out of its lane. Cars with these emblems were seen as stylish and expensive until they began to pose a safety threat to pedestrians. Concerns of hood ornaments flying off and hitting random walkers would lead to the shift from these flamboyant designs to smaller minimalist badges. Those like Rolls-Royce went for the retractable design that goes out of sight after the car starts.
Vacuum. This is great if you have kids. The hose, it's long enough to reach all the way through the...
Here's an essential car feature you certainly missed out on. The built-in vacuum cleaner was one of the first innovations in automobiles, especially for the family vehicle. The feature was introduced to minivans like the 2014 Honda Odyssey. It's aimed at solving a crucial problem common when you have a big family: crumbs, spills, and other things. A long-hosed cleaner could reach all the nooks and crannies of the front and back seats, making it convenient when you needed to remove debris, a spilled beverage, and crumbs left by children and pets. Known as the Honda Vac, it could run up for 8 minutes using the car's battery even when the engine was off, and continuously when the engine was on. Car enthusiasts found this feature appealing, and it soon became popular, but not for long, as the cost of production became a problem. The Honda Vac would slowly be phased out, and most are hopeful it will return because of its practicality as a family-oriented design.
At the ambient temperature outside when you get out of the car, like if you're going into the mall or if you're...
One of the first attempts at incorporating a natural source of energy to supplement traditional power was the solar-paneled roof. Campaigns to reduce emissions have long been going for years, and various industries like automobiles had sought new ideas to improve the design, in line with the CO2 emission goals. Solar panels were designed as an alternate energy source for various parts of the vehicle, helping to reduce emissions while improving fuel efficiency. Toyota was one of the first brands to experiment with the tech, and the result was the solar panel option advertised on the 2010 Prius, designed to power a ventilation fan and keep the interior cool, without the need to use air conditioning, which amped up CO2 emissions. The idea was well received at first, but added a certain aesthetic to the car, and the major limitation with the paneled roofs was they couldn't generate enough power to charge the battery or even power the vehicle for significant distances. Today, they're still being explored and are yet to achieve full potential. However, there's no doubt that as technology continues to evolve, the innovation may find its way in the future. Gas-powered air conditioning was introduced in the 1950s, long before the electric version became popular. The difference between them was gas-powered used gasoline to power up a separate compartment that cooled the interior. It made air conditioning available even when the car was switched off, and that's not possible with the electric system, as the car needs the engine to run the AC. While gas-powered units were a huge breakthrough, they were also expensive and added considerable weight to the car, requiring additional maintenance which made it less appealing to customers. It was slowly phased out and replaced by electric-powered versions we have today. Before we had cruise control, we first had the speed control monitors. Both have the same functions, however, speed control monitors were the earliest design. The first versions were designed in the late 50s by Chrysler, called the autopilot or the speedostat. This feature enabled vehicles to automatically maintain a constant speed without frequent pedaling. The feature significantly improved fuel efficiency and made the long drive smoother. It only evolved with time. By the 70s and 80s, manufacturers adopted more complex cruise control systems that adjust the speed of the car based on traffic, and this is way more reliable, but the early speed control monitor remains an important phase in modern driving assistance technology. Heated side mirrors were an early invention that became popular in the 60s and 70s, first designed for luxury cars. They later became a necessity for regular vehicles because of the increasing demand in the winter season. Mirrors were built with heating elements, which heated the surface of the mirror to melt accumulated snow, while preventing ice from forming on the surface in extreme weather conditions. It allowed drivers to maintain a clear view of their rear at all times. Mercedes and Volvo were early adopters of the system, targeting drivers who were frequently on the road, and the mirror heat could be switched on and off with a single button. But over time, it became a standard for many models across different brands. Another essential feature that first had its breakthrough in the 1950s was the suspension leveling control, also known as the self-leveling suspension. This exceptional feature allowed drivers to adjust the height of their suspension based on the vehicle load and driving conditions like uneven terrain. Early systems used electronically controlled springs and hydraulics. The Cadillac used an air ride system which allowed the vehicle to drift over uneven road, maintaining a stable height. Today, the features are reserved for luxury vehicles, trucks, SUVs, and other off-road vehicles. High-end cars in the 1950s and 60s were designed for the ultimate luxury and convenience. To add to that sophistication, some of the vehicles came with built-in minibars, especially those owned by the wealthy, such as Lincoln, Cadillac, Limousine, and Rolls-Royce. It added to the car's opulence and was certainly a sales advantage for customers who love to have a drink on the go. But as laws against drinking and driving were introduced, the minibar feature, which would often contain alcoholic beverages, began to disappear because it became a legal liability. The feature made a huge impact on pop culture, and there's no doubt it'll find its way into future trends. The cordless rechargeable flashlight is one feature that faded into obscurity, completely forgotten to time. Believe it or not, it was once a time when the cordless flashlight was an important feature and useful, especially for traveling at night. The flashlight was adopted by General Motors for luxury vehicles in the 90s, usually stored in a holster in the trunk or the glove compartment, with a charging port where it was safely charged. The flashlight drew power from the battery through a dedicated port and automatically stopped charging when the battery was full. Even though it still proves useful, the availability of the portable flashlight with USB charging ports makes the cordless rechargeable a lot less desirable. People often think that push button is a new concept, but it's existed since the 1950s. The push-button transmission is an innovation that transcends its era. Rather than the traditional gear lever, some vehicles had buttons you could push to shift gears. Vehicles with these features were available in brands like AMC, Ford, Chrysler, and Edsel, and the mid-century had a fascination with space and its related technology, so convenience and futuristic design were at the top of the list. Instead of changing gears using the lever, drivers could push a button right on the dashboard. Other buttons like reverse and park were available and marketed by Chrysler as a forward look to the future of automobiles. Today, it's found in luxury and hybrid cars. Which of these car features do you remember? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like it, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications so you never miss another great memory in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.